A very good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. And a warm welcome to this webinar on decoding the Basel AML Index brought to you jointly by Fintellect and the Asian Bankers Association. I'm Arpita Bedekar, Chief Operating Officer at Fintellect, privileged to be your host for today. And I have with me Kateryna Boguslavska, PhD and Project Manager, Basel AML Index, International Center for Asset Recovery at the Basel Institute of Governance. She's joining us from Basel. Kateryna, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Arpita. Thank you for this introduction and my warmest welcome to all the participants. It's my great pleasure. And today, the aim of this webinar is to walk you through the methodology of the Basel AML Index so you can understand what is behind this course, how we do the calculations, what options do we have, what expert editions do we have, and actually how you can apply it in practice. I will try to walk you all the steps from choosing the indicators, explaining the logic behind the risks understanding, to the practical implication and demonstration of data. That is my purpose for today, and I hope you enjoy it and we have some fruitful discussion. If you have some questions, please do go ahead and approach me.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kateryna. Sorry to interrupt you, but let me make a quick few housekeeping announcements before I hand it over to you. Just before that, let me introduce you properly to the audience. Dr. Kateryna leads the Basel AML Index, and she works on developing and enhancing methodologies to assess AML CFT risks specific to various countries and regions, utilizing a broad range of financial crime data. And before the Basel Institute, she worked as a political risk analyst at Chatham House in London and at Polixis in Geneva. Dr. Kateryna, we have a large turnout, as is quite usual for Fintellect webinars. We have attendees representing more than 40 countries today. And I think this speaks a lot about how popular the Basel AML Index is. But when we met last month at the FATF Private Sector Collaborative Forum, I remember we discussed how the AML Index can be used as a more effective policy tool. And hence this idea of this webinar was born. And as Dr. Kateryna said, we will hear more about, how we can leverage this index. But before that, we would like to know from all you attendees on how and whether you use the AML index in your organization. So I would request my team to bring up a quick poll at this point. And it will be great if, we can have everyone quickly respond to the poll in the next half minute or so. So in your organization, how is country risk typically assessed in your AML CFT frameworks? Let's give it maybe another 10 to 15 seconds before we close the poll. All right, let's close the poll and share the results. Right, so that's what you have on the screen. Kateryna, I think your presentation is going to be useful for our attendees to learn more about the index. So now let me formally, request you to begin your presentation and take you through the material you've prepared. As she already said, we will leave some time in the end for questions. So please post your questions. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to post your questions there. And one more announcement, all attendees of today's webinar will receive a Fintellect ABA certificate of participation. The slides which have been shared, by Kateryna will also be sent to all the attendees. And this you will receive within the next 7 to 8 days. So thank you. And let me hand it over to you, Kateryna.
Thank you. So let me share the presentation for today. And it is according sorry. It is according with the agenda that you shared with the participants, is shortly about what is the Basel AML Index, what production cycle do we have, how you practically can use the data. Then we looked at separate public expert edition and expert edition plus, and we will end up with some latest trends that we see globally, some regional profiles, best practices and policy implementations. And clearly, there is nothing that do not have limitations. Basel AML Index also has a certain limitations, so we are open to share them and to discuss as well. So actually, the first question is, what is the Basel AML Index? And it is the tool to assess geographic risks for countries in terms of money laundering and related financial crimes. We started to publish it initially in 2012, and it was just to respond to the growing requirements of application of risk-based approach for assessing geographies. We're starting from the idea that it is not that easy to understand what is the risk in terms of money laundering for certain geographies. There were no clear understanding of how to identify risk, what are the components of the risk, and most topical this issue was not for the big financial institutions that would probably have their teams on compliance and AML risks, but rather for medium and low size financial institutions and the NFPP sector. While developing the index, we managed to increase the number of functionalities that we are suggesting, and it is not more any oriented only on the medium and low size financial institutions and the NFPP, but covering rather broad number of clients, including big banks, members of the Wolfsburg Group, as well as online payment system. Also, we have a huge number of clients from the public sector, and that is basically around 70% of all our clients are from the public sector. The index still has the same approach that it doesn't measure real amount of money laundering because simply it would not be possible in any real terms. It is looking at what is risk for countries. And risk in this case is identified as vulnerabilities that countries may face and the mitigating measures that it applies to look at these vulnerabilities. So in this case, we are looking more not in the inherent risks, but rather residual risks for countries. To look at the methodology, we started with the first line of thinking. When you build the index, is basically what do we want to measure? And in this case, we want to measure what is the high risk. We identify it through 5 main domains. That is, the high risk jurisdiction is the one that has shortfalls in the AML, CFT, and CPF framework, the one with high corruption and fraud, the jurisdiction with poor financial transparency and standards, poor public transparency and accountability, weak political rights and rule of law. This is the first line of thinking. So when we try to answer what are we measuring, we are measuring the high risk through this specific 5 domains. It is important to mention that in this case, risks are associated with specific areas, and we use a different weighting system through the domains. So the first one domain, which is we call based on the risks that I represent, understanding of risks that I present earlier. The first domain is on the quality of AML, CFT, and CPF framework. That is the most important domain for us. I will show you what is inside this domain, what are the indicators. The second one is corruption and fraud risks. It has 17.5% of impact. It's also about financial transparency and standards, 17.5% of impact on the overall score. Public transparency and accountability, it has the lowest impact. It has 5% because it relates to the issues not directly connected to money laundering, but still presenting the risks, such as the publicity of the budgeting process in the country and transparency of the expenses for electoral campaigns in the country. The last domain is really important. It's on political and legal risks in the country. So it's the second line of thinking after what is the high-risk jurisdiction. The second line, what we understand is the most important in understanding this risk through 5 domains. To calculate the third line, which is real calculations that we are doing, we use 17 different indicators to calculate these 5 domains. We do not create data by ourselves. We use the data from reputable sources, and we have clear criteria on which indicators we see as reliable. That is the one with a clear methodology and transparent methodology with frequent updates of data. So the updates do not have to be longer than 2 years. And in most of our cases for 16 indicators, it's publicly available indicators. They are available for free. For one indicator, I will speak about this a bit later. We have to pay a fee to get it for our system. So in all the methodological puzzle look like this. So the first, the most important is AML CFT CPF framework. And here we see that it uses 4 different indicators to calculate the score for the domain. The one is from FATF. And here I must say that we use both mutual evaluation reports and follow-up reports, the latest available on the FATF original websites, to calculate the score. The second, in this domain, we use data from US State Department on major money laundering jurisdictions in relation to narcotic trafficking. So we are covering the predicate offense of narcotic trafficking. We also use data from US State Department on human trafficking. And a few years ago, we added data on environmental crime, which includes flora, fauna, and non-renewable crime. So that is the first domain. What we do, we take the data from these 4 sources. We use for FATF recoding mechanisms. I will show you later how we do it. We put this data on one scale from 0 to 10, and we get the score for the domain 1 in AML, CFT, and CPF framework. For corruption and bribery, it's a very interesting, corruption and fraud. It's a very interesting domain. It includes corruption, bribery, fraud in terms of cyber fraud and cyber fraud related crimes, and fraud as financial crime. So this domain was adjusted last year and by adding the fraud data because of the huge importance of this predicate offense currently in the global AML CFT efforts. So this domain now includes these 2 new indicators, and the score again is calculated per domain. The financial secrecy, index that I mentioned, that is the one that we have to pay to use their data. It helps us not only to cover the aspect of financial transparency in the country or issues related to financial transparency, but also the impact of the jurisdictions on global financial flows, because the data from financial secrecy allows us to do it. The public transparency is mostly about, as I mentioned, political finance transparency, budgeting process in the country, and public sector related corruption. The last domain, we have several indicators. It's on judicial independence, rule of law, political and civil rights, and media freedom. The last domain, especially two indicators, judicial independence and rule of law, are very important to check for. Sometimes with FATF data and FATF evaluation, we may find that countries with strong centralized system or rather centralized power, they may show rather good results in two indicators: terrorist financing and quality of supervision. For that, we have clearly to check whether these specific countries and overall whether other countries as well provide for judicial independence and rule of law, because otherwise this good performance might be a reason as political reason might be behind this performance. So that is the logic behind the Basel AML Index. Besides the indicators that we use, we have also 9 sanction regimes. I will show them in the table with data. However, with sanctions regime, according to our methodology, being under any of these 9 sanction regime doesn't have an impact on the overall score of the country. So this information is for you to build your risk appetite and to manage understanding of your risks. However, it doesn't have an impact on the overall score. So having this system in mind now, more in detail how we do the calculations. As I mentioned, we have 17 different indicators. And as you may know, around different indicators, they use different system of ranking, scoring, and it is quite difficult if you use them separately just to be able to compare. What we do, we use the unified coding system, and we code all variables. We collect them, normalize them on a minimum maximum method, where 0 is the lowest risk and 10 is the highest risk. If we have an indicator which have several subcategories where we are not able to assign a specific number because there is no rank or score, but just tier system, we use this 4-tier system and divide them again from 0 to 10, from the lowest to the highest. All variables that we receive, they get the weight and they aggregate it first into the score per domain and then into the overall score for the country. Clearly that it's a kind of approach behind the weighting system, which is participatory approach. We use the expert opinion to do that, and we are checking by statistical testing whether the model with weighting system is still applicable or not. We not always clearly have all 17 indicators available. So in this case, we base the score only on the data that is available, and we do not substitute for missing data. That is the general rules that we apply. As I promised to explain to you on FATF calculations, I'm sure you know, all of you know how the FATF assessment table look at the main FATF website. Consolidated table. It has 4 tiers like non-compliant, partially compliant, largely compliant, and compliant. For technical compliance, that we turn into numbers. So non-compliant is 0 for us, partially compliant is 1, largely compliant is 2, and compliant is 3. So it uses similar coloring system that FATF, but what we additionally have is that based on these numbers, we are able to get the overall score for the country, first taking into account the assessment in effectiveness and taking into account assessment in technical compliance. This table is available for Expert Edition Plus, and I will show you more in details a bit later. Here is just to answer your question, how we get the FATF score. One of the key elements in our production cycle of the index is annual review meeting. It's where we bring experts from the field, from practitioners, supervisors, from international organizations, from academia. We have usually 2 sessions in the late summer, and we discuss with them the latest trend that we see, whether we still keeping with our methodologies with the latest trend. Do we have to add any new indicator, or if we face the issues with outdated indicator, we also ask for the decision to remove these indicators. During the last meeting, we removed outdated indicators from the World Bank and World Economic Forum, which were not anymore updated by the source. So that was decided to move forward with deleting that data. It is also a chance for us to check for statistical testing and to discuss whether the index still meet the best practices and standards in the field, and as I mentioned, to capture the latest development. The decision to add fraud to the index was taken during the annual review meeting. It was a lot of discussion around it. And that's how we actually go through we say it as external review. And this is the thing that we are going through every year. We publish the results of the annual review meeting always on our website, as well as the methodology is always publicly available on our website. You can also download the methodology if you need to present it to supervisors or to get more details or to do your desk review of the methodology. Beside the annual review, as a part of our production cycle, we have different editions. And here I would expect that most of you might use the public edition that we have. It's the edition that we publish annually, end of autumn usually. And in this publication, we have a limited country coverage. We mostly cover the countries which have gone through the same evaluation process of FATF. Currently, it's the 4th round of evaluation. So if back that time last year, the countries were not evaluated with the 4th round of FATF, it would not be included in the public edition. In the public edition, we include only the overall score. So you can't see the scores per domain. You can't see the 17 indicators. You can't see the sanction table. And actually, the purpose of the public edition is rather to raise important issues which we see globally from one year to another year, and to bring it to the wider discussion, to add to the dialogue on the most current issues in terms of MLTF, PF risks. So that we not suggest to use for your internal assessment risks, because it is rather limited. Expert edition provides larger country coverage. It provides quarterly updates, not annual. We updates quarterly on early December, late March, late June, and late September. And you can have all the 17 underlying indicators. You can see the jurisdiction profiles. You can download data in CSV or Excel format. You can also ask us to have access to API format of data. The Expert Edition Plus is more for those that feel a passion to the FATF data and understanding the underlying indicator behind the overall score of FATF. This edition also provides you to have access to the prediction of risks of being gray listed, and you can also get the same data set as with Expert Edition and quarterly updates. This price is for the private sector. For public sector, it's absolutely for free. So I would advise you, if you are from the public sector, to subscribe for the Expert Edition Plus. If you are from private sector, to consider subscribing. But we are moving further, and I want to show you the practical way to use the data. So that's how our website looks like, and it's the interactive table that you may use. And let me stop sharing here and show you the real example. Just a second. So I guess you can see it, right? So with the Expert Edition Standard, you have this table where you can choose and organize in a way your own system by checking only for the indicators that might be interested for you, or for domains specifically that might be interesting for you. For example, I want to look only at the domain 1, and I want to check for FATF and US data. And then I will use to the bottom to apply this. I will also have to choose the country clearly, and then you will have the possibility to see the result. Let's search for. Yeah, so we get Albania and we get results for this country with the indicators, and that is the table that is available on the interactive platform. Beside that, you can go to the data set and download the latest Excel file or CSV file. That would be your approach if you are a subscriber to the Expert Edition. And let me show you the data that you are downloading. So that will be it. This is a table that I prepared for the countries present here according to the pre-registration results. And that what you would see specifically if you look for that countries. Let's check, for example, for Cambodia. Just sorry if it is out of any purpose, just an example to demonstrate how the data works. So we have the overall score, and it's from which is 6.71. And here we have, as I mentioned, the scale from 0 to 10. On this scale, from 0 to 3.3 is the low risk country. From 3.3 to 6.6 is a medium risk country. And from 6.6 to 9.9 is a high risk country. So here we see that Cambodia is a high risk country, and we can understand what are the underlying reasons. First, let's check on the overall scope domains. Quality of AML CFT framework is 6.66. The corruption and fraud risks are 7.55. Financial transparency is 6. Public transparency 5.9. And political and legal risks are 7.18. So we can first identify what are the most topical sectors or domains for the country that would be corruption and fraud risks, as well as political and legal risks. The third area would be quality of AML CFT framework. In this quality of AML CFT framework, we see that country has the highest score in terms of narcotic trafficking and trafficking in persons, as assessed by the US State Department. And we also see that country experience high risks in terms of environmental crime. For corruption, we see the corruption from Transparency International and trace bribery high risks, as well as high risks for fraud and cyber-related fraud in the country. If we look at the political and legal risks, we see that the country experiences high risks in terms of freedom in the world. So it's for political and civil rights. That is the picture that we can get for Cambodia. And sorry, by approaching this country, it might be any other country. We may look, for example, at Zambia, which will be a medium risk country. And we will again start by looking what is the most topical domain for us and where we see the highest issues in terms of the scores on the scale from 0 to 10. So that is the Excel table. That is what I showed for specific countries, which are presented here, and you will get this screenshot in the presentation. But the Basel AML Index Expert Edition in total has 203 countries. The importance here is also to mention about the asterisks. As I said, we identify countries that are assessed with the fourth round methodology. As of now, the updates were published in the beginning of April. There was still no evaluation from Maldives, and that's why we don't have asterisks here. It means that the comparability of these results with other results that have asterisks might be a bit complicated. As of now, almost 88 or 89% of all the countries have been already assessed with the fourth round, and you know that we are coming to the fifth round. Currently, Malaysia and Latvia are undergoing the process of the review with the 5th round evaluations, but that will be reflected later in the data. I would stop sharing here just to give you an overview and understanding of how the data looks and how you can apply this data. And as I mentioned, there is also a table with sanctions, but they are more for information purposes and not impacting the score of the country. Let me move on with my presentation. Sorry. Yeah, that you will see in the presentation that you will get. I also mentioned that we have Expert Edition Plus. And Expert Edition Plus, you get the same Excel table that I demonstrated previously, but additionally, you get the FATF dataset, FATF reports with quarterly updates based on the regional performance of across the all jurisdictions assessed by FATF, and also prediction of the grey list, as I mentioned. You also get access to the reports on Gibraltar, Jersey, Guernsey, and Isle of Man. They are not included in the expert edition standards just because we don't have enough data coverage. For these jurisdictions, we have mostly only the FATF assessment, and in some cases we have financial secrecy index assessment. So we have to build on additional data like national risk assessment, sectoral assessment, to bring at least some picture for this country. We do have a score for these countries in the Expert Edition Plus. However, the score has to be taken very carefully just because the data is limited. The prediction of the risks for being grey listed, it's a very interesting function that we added around 2 years ago. And how is it possible to do? We have already the coded data in numbers. So we have the data set that we can work with and apply any Excel if functions or any other functions. And we found 4 specific conditions that are stated on the FATF website under the ICRG procedures on when the countries might be referred to the grey list based on their poor performance in mutual evaluation reports. Clearly, there are other reasons when countries might be referred to the grey list by FATF member, or they may be referred to the grey list because they don't want to participate or be a part or to go through the FATF assessment. We can't predict that part because it's mostly politically driven. But in 90%, countries ended up with a grey list based on their poor performance in the mutual evaluation report. For that, FATF identifies 4 specific conditions, 2 of them for effectiveness, 2 of them for technical compliance. We apply these conditions to our data set to find out which country fulfill any of 4 conditions. It doesn't mean is it one condition, is it all 4 conditions, even one condition is enough for being grey listed. This prediction is quite important. Clearly, it might not be the surprise for public sector, but it helps private sector to develop proactive approach and set up some mitigating measures in case the country will be gray listed, and they can see this from the table. One important additional criteria here is whether the jurisdiction has the financial size higher than 5 billion US dollars. We're also checking for that, and we describe this in our report on FATF trends and data analysis. We look specifically for each region, in which region the country fulfills the conditions, meets the conditions for being gray listed, and whether it also meets the criteria for the size of the financial center. That's I don't want to shame and blame any country here, but that's how it looks. We see that based on the recent trends, the most frequent condition which countries meet is condition 3. It relates to effectiveness, and it states that jurisdiction is rated 0 or 1 for 9 or more in 11 immediate outcomes, with a minimum of 2 zeros. And this is the most frequent condition that we see being applied in recent decision for the gray list. Clearly, that some countries manage to escape gray list. For that, they have an opportunity, or so-called 1-year window of opportunity, when they can take political obligation, take immediate actions to respond to the deficiencies identified in their MER. And that helps a lot, because that is the way to escape the gray list and basically not to face the severe consequences of it. As I said, the Expert Edition Plus provides you with this opportunity and gives you the full FATF data set, looking separately at effectiveness and at technical compliance. How do you use the Basel AML Index? So for some of our clients, we know that is a standalone methodology, and they use it to assess their MLTF risks. We know that for many of our clients, it's a benchmarking instrument, so they have their internal model and they want to test it with our results. We had a very interesting cooperation with one of the banks. Before the supervisory visit to their bank, they did the benchmarking exercise with the index. We identify around 8 or 9 jurisdictions with different risk level, and we help them to build the arguments that why this 8 or 9 jurisdictions have different risk level in their assessment and in our assessment. Clearly that also in terms of knowing the risks of gray listing or knowing the updates on sanctions, it helps private clients to build their risk mitigating measures and to be in more proactive than reactive approach. For public agencies, it's a lot about public agencies. As you could see from the data, from the scores on domain, it helps you to identify the gaps in your general structure in country, in your AML safety infrastructure specifically, and it helps you to apply risk-based approach. So if you have good scores with public transparency, probably it won't be the first area for you to look at, but you would, and at the same time, you have high risk related to environmental crime or human trafficking. That would be the area where you would most likely, in a best way, use your resources. It is also a way to understand how you did in the previous round of assessment with MER, to identify your deficiencies that have not been closed through the follow-up reports and prepare for the next round of FATF assessment. Currently, we have advisory work with one of the countries to help them to prepare for the next round of assessment, to understand the new standards, to understand first their gaps and the deficiencies, and to help them to build a list of priorities. That was about Expert Edition and Expert Edition Plus. I still have probably a few moments to finish on the public edition. As I mentioned, generally, it's just the score that you have published annually. And what we seen last year, it was several focuses, which we looked from the global perspective, was focused on fraud, because as I mentioned, it's huge and rapidly growing predicate offense for money laundering. We looked at how the new data impacted the score of countries, and you could see this table that it has the highest impact for Western Europe. It has also high impact for East Asia and Pacific. So that is reflected in the map. We also looked from the global perspective of where we see the progress. And for that, we looked at the data for 113 countries that went through the initial MAR and then follow-up reports during the last 10 years. And we saw that the progress in technical compliance improved from 50 to 62%. We saw specifically in which indicators of FATF we see this improvement. We looked also at to understand which countries are doing the best progress, and we found out that it is mostly because of the grey listing process and because of the need for enhanced follow-up reports. So we saw that the biggest progress were done by these countries in certain percentage points. That is on progress. And the thing which is actually really interesting, that yeah, we see the progress, but it's mostly a way to catch up. So it's mostly those countries that were on the lower level, they are catching up to get to the average, but they are still not at that average global point. On effectiveness, the situation is rather pessimistic if we compare it with technical compliance. We see the drop in effectiveness scores in certain immediate outcomes. And the most topical issue for all the countries globally is the quality of ML investigation, prosecution, and application of sanctions. That is the #1 global issue, which we managed to identify through the available data and in our public edition 2024. We looked, because we are dealing with asset recovery, we look specifically at the effectiveness in asset recovery value chain. And again, that is, we see that investigation is the lowest out of 4 other parts in the value chain for asset recovery. The special focus was also on FATF and dealing with some myth around. The first one, that it's a surprise, not anymore, because we can predict it, but for public sector it was never a surprise, so we don't have to put some money whether a new country will add in the grey list or not. It's not that betting exercise. Is something that we can look at in advance. We looked also at the consequences of grey listing. Clearly, it's a lot of negative impacts, but we saw that it's a huge motivation for countries to move forward and to do better. And other myth you can read in our annual review. annual publication, which is available on our website. You can also look at specific profiles for your region, which are also available on our website. I will just show you how it looks. We looked at the domains, but again, you see only the overall score for the country. And we compare the regional average per domain with global average to understand the perspective where certain regions stand and what issues do they have. We look at the weakest area, we look at the lowest areas in terms of FATF effectiveness for region, and we checked for the fraud indicator because it was this year the new indicator for us. So that is the profiles. And as I promised on limitations, clearly a lot of data is perception-based indicators, and we can do nothing about it. We will never have ideal data, so we try to work with what we have and get the most out of it. Clearly, it's rather difficult to evaluate risks related to geographies and financial crimes. It's not the risks model where you could use simple statistical calculations and predict some loss in terms of bankruptcy or any other loss. Here we can't predict the loss in terms of money laundering. Sometimes we have issue of the comparability of results, but it's always a trade-off whether we want to stay in line with the latest trends and predicate offenses and the new data that may appear, or we stick to the same data and look only to have the comparability of results. We try to find a balanced approach here, but clearly it's not suggestible to look at just two data sets from this year to previous year and compare your country. Better do it in some longer perspective and look at underlying indicators, not just the overall score. That is all from my side. As I mentioned, for all public agencies, I advise to go and subscribe for Expert Edition Plus, so you can get our fullest edition. For private sector, please consider the methodology and all the materials that I shared with you are partially also available on our website. The presentation will be shared after. Thank you.
Thank you, Kateryna, for that really comprehensive and very clear to understand, the way you simplified the index. Thank you so much for that. I can see a few questions already in the Q&A box, but before we move on to the questions, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes telling you about some upcoming FinTech training programs. So our next virtual workshop, which we also host along with the ABA, is on addressing AML risks in DNFBBs, Insights for Banks and Financial Institutions, which is taking place on May 15th. For our attendees who are joining in from Nepal, the next in-person full-day workshop in Kathmandu on practical approach to strengthening AML practices post the FATF grey listing will take place on May 21st. That's at Hotel Aloft Tamil. And our upcoming batch of the FinTech Certified AML CFT Professional, or FCAP, training and certification, which takes place in Bangkok every quarter. That's scheduled for June 19th and 20th in the upcoming quarter. There are a few seats still left for that one. So you can visit our website or get in touch with us, with any member of our team to register for any of these upcoming programs. All right, so let's bring on some questions now. Kateryna, let me start right from the top. The first question is by Sylvia Tan. I think she was referring to the puzzle chart that you were showing, and she was asking, may I know what does production cycle mean?
Sorry, it's probably internal jargon. It's like how we do it during the year because it's very clear setup deadlines. So the first one is for quarterly updates that I mentioned. It's December, March, September. December, March, June, and September. So that's when we do the updates, and it's in line also with the FATF plenary session to reflect on the latest decision on grey list, who was added, which countries were removed. The cycle also include the annual review meeting at the end of summer and the publication, annual publication, at the end of autumn. So that is our key dates that we have. When we do the updates for clients, we send an email identifying which specific indicators were updated. If it is about FATF, which countries got the new MER or new follow-up reports. So that is within this 4 quarterly updates.
Great, thank you. The next question is by Tomer. He says, he or she, sorry, this system, can it be linked through APIs, or are you connected with other watch list screening systems, the commercial screening systems that are available?
No, we don't connect to the sanction screening system. And to be honest, sanction, as I mentioned, is for informative purposes. So there will be a gap for you if you use only the Basel AML Index for sanctions. That won't be the proper approach, because as I mentioned, we do the updates only quarterly. So there will be a gap if some new country was added in, for example, in November, we will get it in the list only in December. So if you need more rapid approach, then you better use some other sanction screening mechanisms. And what we do for sanctions is only country-based sanctions. It's not persons, not entities, it's only country-based. So I wouldn't recommend looking at the Basel AML Index if you look only for sanctions.
Right. How does the index
with API? Yes, you can subscribe for API. It's with our IT department, and we charge additional fee for that. But you can you can use the API to integrate the data into your system. Yes, this is possible. Otherwise, you have a system to set up a manager of your account and add 5 users to download the data.
Sure. The next one is, may I know the banding score of high risk country, medium risk country, and low risk country? How to identify this banding?
Yeah. As I mentioned, currently we use the simple mathematical model from 0 to 3.3 low risk, from 3.3 to 6.6 medium risk, from 6.6 to 9.9 is a high risk. This year we planned to look more in details into this risk model. That will be a question for our annual review meeting, but currently this is what we use.
Sure. Just going to take one question that's come in chat. How do you decide which data sources to use for each of the domains? Example, for narcotics trafficking data, you use data from US government. Do you look into what the agency or government does and how much data is available, etc.?
Yeah. So that is the question. What I already mentioned is how we use how we check and choose the sources and what is reliable source for us. So first, it has to be publicly available. The methodology has to be clear, and we have to be able to understand the methodology. If there are any changes in methodology, we should be able to see that from the public sources. And most importantly, this has frequently updates. What we are seeing on the market recently is new indices appearing and disappearing, appearing and disappearing. So there is a need for sustainability of the data that we use. So we check very precisely on the updates, on the frequency of updates.
Sure, thank you. I'm going to take one last question on how can the institution subscribe to the Basel AML Index?
Yeah, in the presentation, at the last slide, I put in the link. You have to just press the link and it will be easy way to subscribe. If you are from the public institution, you have to provide some document that you are from the public institution, and that will be for free for you. For private sector, if you need some additional support, you can write to me because the system is automatic. You can pay by your bank card, but if you need some special requirements in terms of accounting, please let me know and I will put you in touch with our administrative team.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think we're out of time. Thanks, Kateryna. Thanks for all the time and effort that you have put into preparing for this webinar and for, explaining this so nicely to our attendees. Many thanks also to the Asian Bankers Association for partnering with us for this webinar, especially to Mig Moreno. Attendees, thank you for joining us. I hope that this has been useful for everyone, and we look forward to your participation in future FinTech programs. Thank you once again. Signing off from here. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you, Arpita. And thank for all the participants. It was my great pleasure. I hope you know now better how to use the Basel AML Index. And if you have some questions or you want more to know more details, always contact me. I'm available for that. Thank you.